Hey guys, welcome back. Thank you for joining me. For those of you who are new here, I'm Eyla Cuenca. I'm a childbirth educator, doula, birth trauma specialist. I teach couples how to prepare for conception, birth, and postpartum, and I also train doulas and childbirth educators all over the world. If you are new here, please subscribe and like this video. It helps me continue to make this content for you, to support you wherever you are in your process. Today, I'm going to be talking a little bit about postpartum. So many questions come through social media and the website on how to prepare for postpartum, how to prevent postpartum depression, what tools and things are needed to create an easeful postpartum experience. But I want to go a little bit deeper into the foundational preparation that we can do and understanding how postpartum depression, for example, can come into a woman's life. So if you have any specific questions, always leave them in the comment. I personally check the comments myself. I respond to them. I want to make sure that you're getting awesome resources and connected with the things that you need. So share your experience in the comments. Did you experience postpartum depression? Are you concerned about that? Was there anything that helped you in postpartum? Share it in there and let's get the conversation going. First, I want to share a little bit about how we misconceive this idea of postpartum depression. Of course, this is not to put it lightly. For some women, anywhere in the world, it can create such an impact that a woman is not able to actually care for her baby. So it's a very serious issue. And I'm going to speak to the general population and kind of the general misconception that we have of this experience. Of course, if you are experiencing postpartum depression, it is severe. You're having challenges even caring for yourself, for the baby. Do seek medical attention, medical support. You can reach out to us as well, and we can point you to the right resources at uncoveringbirth.com. But I'll speak to the misconceptions of postpartum depression and what's really needed for preparing for postpartum. So we're often told through the conventional medical model and through conventional psychology and psychiatry that postpartum depression is just a hormonal response to giving birth and or it is genetic. Okay, I don't necessarily, in my experience over the last few decades, do not really subscribe to that definition. I'm going to give you the definition of what I have seen in my small petri dish of working with women all over the world throughout this process and from studying family systems and birth through an anthropological lens. So women and the way that we birth has changed a lot, okay? And I've created other content on how birth has changed and some master classes as well, so please check those out. But postpartum has evolved, right? For the last 150 years, we have been doing postpartum very different because we've been doing birth very different. The nuclear family has changed. Women going back into the workforce has also impacted this change. Formula feeding and access to formula and different types of ideas of what's healthy for a baby has also impacted the postpartum experience. So we'll rewind a little bit and just go into the birth experience. Okay, when a woman has a highly medicalized birth, it's very likely she will be separated from her baby in the immediate postpartum. And these interventions that occur, I'll give you an example. Say a woman goes in for an induction because she's been told that it was necessary based on results that they got from the ultrasound. And without researching it very much further, the woman agrees to the induction. But very little information or education is given to her about what's implied with this induction and what else is attached to this procedure. Very often the epidural is attached to this procedure, and sometimes unplanned C-section is also attached to this procedure. And so what happens next is a woman is then undergoing procedures which lead to her being separated from her baby after birth. And we can talk a little bit about the golden hour and the biological functions that it serves for the mother-baby dyad. However, I will say for now that when a woman is separated from her baby, the baby is taken to the NICU. A lot of these necessary biological, let's say, receptors are not activated. A lot of the hormones that are often released from the mother-baby contact of being together immediately after birth are not released. Very often the baby is given other interventions in order to sustain them when they are separated from the mother, whether that being fed sugar water or some type of supplementation. So then the mother is not releasing the amount of oxytocin that she needs to be releasing in order to get the baby's systems to start going and for them to really build that bond and that connection. So just that immediate separation in postpartum, immediately following the birth, can have a ripple effect that will impact their connection, their feeding relationship, her hormonal responses, her desire and connection, her connection to the baby, and her desire to feed and care for the baby is also impacted. So then what happens when she gets home? Very often a woman will be given a feeding schedule for the baby. Maybe her milk hasn't fully come in because she's not had a lot of contact with the baby. Maybe she's recovering from the unplanned C-section, and she doesn't have what she needs at home in order to support her. So now she's under-resourced, and the people around her are not really sure how to support her. So in this overwhelm, in this recovery, she is really unable to drop into her postpartum experience with the baby, with herself, with her new identity as a mother, or maybe she already has children, so now it's, her second or her third, and it becomes incredibly overwhelming to the point where now stress hormones are going up, milk is not coming down, the baby's fussy, and from there we experience a cascade of events that lead us down to, supplementation, requiring outside help to come in, and the list can go on. So what I have seen being a really common factor in kind of igniting this postpartum depression epidemic is that women very often receive birth interventions that lead them to a big disconnect from their baby immediately postpartum that then has a cascade effect, and it also impacts their capacity to settle into the experience because what they might have experienced in birth registered in their system as traumatic, as a violation, especially if it was an unexpected surgery like a C-section or incredibly painful experience from Pitocin or Cytotec from an induction, or mistreatment at the hospital, or surprise events at a home birth, or surprise events at a birth center, whatever it might be. So the choices made in that birth, a lack of education around how to move through the birth can lead to a disconnect in postpartum, which leads to very often postpartum depression, or what some might call postpartum blues, which is, a minor variation of postpartum depression. So that's one of the biggest factors. And what we can do to prevent that is really good education during the pregnancy about making informed choices for the birth and getting really aligned with our healthcare providers, right? Very often in birth, when things don't go our way, they go in another direction, or they don't feel good, or we feel a severe loss of control or some type of violation, it's very often because women did not properly align with a healthcare provider, meaning they went ahead and worked with someone that they didn't feel totally comfortable with, but kind of gaslit themselves into believing it was a good match, or they didn't want to go through the rigmarole of finding a different provider because they were already 6 months pregnant and they just didn't want to go through the work and the tediousness of it. So unfortunately, we really do have to get aligned with that provider, even if it means switching care 3-4 times. I personally, I was working with an OB in the beginning. That's a story for another time, just one visit. And I'll definitely make a video about why that didn't work out. And then I was working with a midwife at a birth center who was going to do a home birth for about 5.5 months of the pregnancy. But I started realizing in the visits that I really wasn't aligned with her. Like, we had different philosophies about birth, and also I wasn't really vibing with her energetically. Was she qualified? Of course. She'd been a midwife for 40 years at that point. Most of these people are qualified. They wouldn't have a license or a degree if they weren't qualified. That doesn't matter. What matters is, do you feel safe in their presence? Are they going to be able to support you through this journey of pregnancy, labor, and birth and immediate postpartum? Are you aligned philosophically? These are really important questions to ask. People look at percentages of C-sections or percentages of transfers, and they get really stuck on the numbers. However, what's really important is the energetic alignment and the philosophical alignment. And does the woman feel contained and safe, seen, supported? That is a must in order to have a more cohesive birth experience, leading to a more cohesive postpartum experience. The other piece here is that we have very different family structures and social structures at this point. Most women do not realize that they have to enlist support in postpartum. Not a night nurse, not someone who's going to take the baby away from them and take care of them so that the mother can go back to the duties of regular life. It's actual support with everything else besides the baby. So what does that look like? It looks like somebody coming in to clean the house a few days a week, somebody to tidy up, someone to come in and bring meals or prepare meals at the house. This could be a postpartum doula, someone who can take care of everything else that the mother would otherwise be doing so that she can solely focus on really strengthening that bond between her and the baby, learning the language of breastfeeding, learning the rhythms of the baby, because babies do communicate. They actually communicate very clearly, but the woman has to be listening and watching very closely. It's almost like hearing a feather drop, right? It seems subtle. It's not mysterious. Some people think it's impossible, but it's because they're caught up with too many other things to really focus in on matching with the baby's nervous system, listening to their cues, watching their eyes, watching what their hands do, paying attention to how their breathing is changing. All of those things are a language. And when the mother has to worry about going back to work and getting on the computer and working remotely and cooking the food and doing the stuff, she's not able to attune to her baby. So when I say enlist postpartum support, what I mean is someone to come in and take care of all those other things. And unfortunately, we live in a time where we are so isolated from that type of support. We don't live near family. We don't have the family. We have friends and community perhaps who doesn't value the postpartum period, and so we have to find support systems like postpartum doulas or house cleaners. And we used to live in a world where it was just commonplace in that community to bring the woman food every day, usually for 40 days, to come in and give her massage and do different things to support her body, but never to take the baby away from her so that she could go and meet the needs of a sociocultural structure that is totally modern. So what can a woman do? She can create a meal train in her pregnancy. She can say, okay, instead of all of these useless things that I'm putting on my baby shower registry, I can actually just ask for postpartum hours from a postpartum doula, or I can ask for meal services for 2 months, or I can get a subscription to a home cleaner, whatever it is. This is where the resources should be put, not into Bluetooth cameras and wipe warmers and mittens and things that babies really don't need. And I do have a video that's coming out soon on all the things that you actually need for a newborn baby and the things you don't need. And that list is pretty wild because I'd say about 90% of the things that you're told you need for a newborn and for a new mother are a huge waste of money. You're being marketed to. Don't believe it. I'm telling you right here, right now, what you need is the postpartum holding and support and resources. That is where the money should be going and the gifts should be going. So this is a way that a woman can actually prevent her postpartum depression, because so much of that depression, the overwhelm, the anxiety comes from not being held and supported and seen in postpartum. Forget if she even had a traumatic birth. Now she's feeling completely isolated and like she doesn't know how to even engage with her baby because she's overwhelmed by all of the other things that she needs to do and take care of. There's a lot of deeper details to explore when it comes to the relationship she has with her partner if she's partnered, but that's something else that's really case by case basis. And I won't include it here in this video because it can be deeply triggering for most women and most couples to actually have to confront their dynamics that could be really impeding the health of her postpartum experience. So if you are in this amazing position of planning for your pregnancy, getting ready for life with a new baby, take into consideration getting all of your postpartum resources set up for at least 2 months, okay? And also consider taking a childbirth education class. Not just hypnobirthing, not just the one-day hospital class, but a really good in-depth class like the Bradley method or the Uncovering Birth method, where you and your partner learn everything you need to know about preparing for the pregnancy, the birth, preventing postpartum issues, preventing unwanted interventions in the pregnancy and in the birth that can often lead to unwanted outcomes. So, education and postpartum resources. And I also want to invite you to diving a little bit deeper into breastfeeding. Breastfeeding is a learned skill, and historically, for thousands of years, women learned how to breastfeed from watching the women around them breastfeed, right? We lived in multi-generational groups, households where as a young girl, you would see your aunt or your older sister, or even your mother breastfeeding. So you learned that way. We learned that way. However, now we don't live in those types of homes. And we're probably at a generation at this point where our parents bottle fed us, and maybe they were the last generation to be breastfed, or even maybe the second. And so now it's a lost art form. However, it is one of the building blocks to create a healthy human, and the longevity of their experience on this earth is deeply impacted by whether they were breastfed or not. So women already have a challenge in integrating into postpartum, and one of the ways we can prevent that challenge and that stress is by feeling educated and kind of knowing what to expect when it comes to that breastfeeding journey. Most women are going to have to get a lactation consultant in their home to make this happen. It's just the way that it is because we didn't watch it growing up. And I'm sorry to say, but money might have to be spent unless you have great government support wherever you live. However, this is something that I would not skimp out on. So I would recommend adding this to your registry if you're doing a baby shower or something like that, or people are asking you what you might need. Forget the onesies, forget the baby blankets, forget the wipe warmers. Ask for 2 sessions with a breastfeeding counselor, or read books, or take our class, the breastfeeding master class at uncoveringbirth.com. It's only an hour. It's very reasonably priced. You own it for life. Watch it again and again. It's going to change the way that you view that whole process, and it's going to be pleasurable, and it's not going to be daunting. We have to get out of saying, I'll breastfeed if it's easy, I'll breastfeed if it's convenient. No, I want you to start thinking, I will breastfeed like my life depends on it because it is the best for your baby, it is the best for you and your recovery, and in preventing postpartum depression. When you breastfeed for at least 1 year, the health benefits are astronomical. I'll drop some resources in the show notes for you to check out. Thank you so much for being here. And please, if you got anything from this video, give a thumbs up, leave a comment, let me know what you think. Thank you guys.